Hey, Hickok 45. This is Alexander Fraser Kantrowitz. I uh, just wanted to, I guess, make a response video to your Draft Dodger video. I was born in 1968. I guess the year you were, in question. The year. Whoa! There goes my phone. If it'll stay in one place, let's see. Yeah, the year you were in college, and not really subject to the draft because you're gigantic. I'm 5'8", you're 6'8". But yeah, I just wanted to note my. I had to laugh because my cousin Hal, my beloved cousin Hal, was he counseled guys your age on how to dodge the draft, how to get to Canada, and not go to Vietnam. He was basically a communist. I'm a communist. Different flavors, sort of like Protestantism. There's different denominations of communism, but my cousin Hal, he really cute, sweet old guy. Ended up being a civil engineer. He helped to build whatever, you have the theory, the architects, and then the practice, the construction workers. He was the engineer on the World Trade Center, actually. So if you want to speak about American patriotism, no one was more American than Hal, but at the same time, and more wholesome. And like Grandpa Walton was a communist too, Hal was a Popular Front. That's my point. He was a Popular Front communist. Post 1933. Communist. Communism is the new Americanism. Excuse me. Bill Browder? No. It's been so long I mix it up. But Earl Browder. He was the head of what became the Communist Party Association of America. And he basically, they're a bunch of middle class red liberals, and that was my cousin Hal. You would never meet a nicer, sweeter guy than my cousin Hal. And I used to love going to his place with his childhood sweetheart Marion for Thanksgiving. With the whole Ms. Polka. And I'd kid him, half kid him. How's Fidel and Kim Il Sung doing, and Brezhnev, and he was a big fan, and I thought that was great because I was for the revolutionary, still am for the revolutionary overthrow of American capitalism. Anyway, that's a long story. How devolved after 1991, unfortunately, but great times with Hal. Excuse me. But his father was Isaac Rotinger from Tarashcha, Ukraine. And next to Ukraine, of course, is Belarus, where my more immediate family, grandparents were from. And most of our people were communists. First, the General Union Jewish Workers, the Bunds. And Belarus is very much like Vietnam. Swampy. Only place besides Vietnam in that whole giant landmass not to be invaded by the Mongols. Too swampy. And like the Vietnamese, our people have centuries-long tradition against Napoleon or against the Mongols or whoever, even the Russians, of guerrilla struggle. The partisans. And that was not really mentioned because we were very Soviet communist, whereas maybe the Greeks or the Yugoslavs were a bit more liberal comparatively. And the Greeks' struggle got crushed. Ours, we were we took out the Polish ruling class to start and shot them all, and give no fucks. Anyway, so Vietnam, I actually went to Vietnam a couple winters ago. I have a couple of friends on Facebook. One's from Hanoi, one's from Saigon, and stayed, with the friend, his family outside of Hanoi for Tet, for Vietnamese New Year. We had dog and pork, and they had a calendar photo. I think it was a portrait, one of Ho Chi Minh, and one of grandma and the daughter-in-law, son, etc. The family, right there in the living room wall. And yeah, it was a nice time. Lots of air pollution, too much air pollution, but whatever. Yeah, they said, and my friends, they're basically what we'd call in the former Soviet Union polkabanos, up and coming white collar types, who were peasant, previously, just like we were in the Soviet Union. Well, not my people, we were merchants mostly, or skilled workers, but Jews. But anyway, the whole Vietnam struggle. Yeah, my dad was like CIA agent or asset, Nathan Kantrowitz. And, but he was the CIA socialist, as we joke about on the left here. And, yeah, he was actually against the Vietnam War, along with Dick Cloward and Francis Fox Piven, what's his name, the conspiracy nutter guy, Alex Jones, I guess, and the other one. They were ranting about Francis Fox Piven and American communists. Well, they were more, like super liberals. That's gets complicated. They were basically super liberals for criminals and, mass welfare and, all the stuff you love, I'm sure, and all your viewers love. As a communist, me not so much. But yeah, the Vietnam War. Yeah, I grew up in Kent, Ohio, which you probably remember as the site where Nixon and Rhodes. Rhodes was the governor of Ohio, and Nixon was the president. Of course, they sent in the National Guard after a Teamsters strike, militant strike. National Guard goes in there, tired. Their commander and provocateur basically goad them. I guess the provocateur had a .38 snub nose. He shot that, and the commander said, "Fire!" And so they fired the rifles into the student body protesting, and murdered 4. Thus Neil Young song 4 dead in Ohio, and wounded overall 13 casualties, I believe. And yeah, I grew up like going to protests against building a gym on the site of the murder. And I, kind of met in passing some of those people who were left in wheelchairs, by the fucking murderers of the U.S. Government. And, yeah, I just hated them, the U.S. government, that is. But, yeah, I knew Vietnam veterans against the war. Barry Romo, he was a captain at Hue, in the U.S. Army. I'm friendly with, it took one class with John Farnham. Of course, he was an officer there. My cousin was in the Marines. Both of them actually were I think they were both in the Marines in Da Nang. And when I went to Vietnam, I visited the cathedral in Hue, where one of my cousins were. Anyhow, so yeah, they were like microwave radio operators. They were in the Marines. I guess they got overrun. I forget what years they were there for like 2 tours of duty. Yeah, my cousin. I was told like when he came back to America, he was a stoic guy, still is. What was it? He'd be walking on the street, a car would backfire, and he'd hit the deck. So he had like some trauma, from basically being overrun by the NLA, So, and I guess like that was a big part of my life growing up was basically the aftermath of Vietnam and among other things. Growing up in Kent, Ohio. And all that fucking mess. But what happened? Oh yeah, I was delighted to learn though, the year I was born, 1968, the comrades came down from the north, the Vietnamese KGB came down in Hue in particular, in the Citadel. All the rats, the collaborators with the American imperialists were there, and they freaked out when they heard the NLA was coming. And the whole offensive, Tet Offensive, was actually, I'd forgotten or whatever, but it was like from, New Year's when I was there, so January, February, I think it's February actually, is Tet, technically speaking. It moves around, it's a lunar calendar. But the comrades assaulted the imperialists, the U.S. forces, and their collaborators, the ARVN, for some months, like 9 months into like September and beyond. And I guess most of those people involved in the human wave, or whatever you want to call it, assault on the invaders, probably most of them were killed. But they had, I forget the numbers at the moment. I think I wrote them down, but it's been 2 years. But basically, excuse me, they, so the collaborators, they're in the Citadel of Hui. It's an old imperial palace, grounds very big. They all run for the exits, stampede. Doors too small, so they stampede each other, they kill each other. And then the comrades come in, the Vietnamese, KGB, whatever they're, you call them, and they basically, had lists of these collaborators, and, the bright, cheery, beautiful faces, the liberals you see today, like giving YouTube video tours on Lonely Planet, those people, coffee shop owners, Chads and Karens, and of Vietnam. And they lined them up. I was told, this cute young girl was selling tickets. I spoke to the real estate ladies who were giving tours in the Citadel, and I was like, hey ladies, can you, through Google Translate, I don't really speak Vietnamese, I spoke Japanese 30 years ago, but anyway, so I was like, hey ladies, can you tell me, where do they shoot the collaborators? That's what I want to, raise a toast to. And they got scared, and they're like, I was like, come on ladies, like I'm Belaruski, we're like the Vietnamese of the Soviet Union. I went to Katyn and I toasted the deaths of the Polish ruling class because, similar situation. And, but they got scared. But the cute girl, she was like, I don't know, 20 some odd. She was like, oh, okay, yeah, it's history. My grandpa was probably shooting these people. And, but that was 50 years ago. And you're kind of old. Well, I look younger. It's the third world, so I look like 35, and I'm like 56 this year. But anyway, she was like, oh, okay, uncle, it's over in the Citadel. And I was like, oh, okay, thanks. I don't think I'll buy a ticket. I saw a lot of the feudal architecture of Japan, and, I'd be like looking for the bullet holes, and the other liberals on the tour would be like, oh my God, you're so deplorable. And well, I want to see, the evidence of the cleansing of Vietnam from, as Malcolm X said, ain't no Uncle Toms in China, because they shot them all, and that's the problem in America. We got, just layers and layers of Uncle Toms, right? So I had to work with them in Chicago as a federal anti-corruption hire, and it's, garbage in human form. So anyway, the comrades came down, Vietnamese KGB, line these fucks up against the wall, gun them down, take their bodies, throw them in the rice paddies, the farmers' rice paddies, bury them, like whatever it was, a kilometer outside of Hue. I think it was 3 spots. And then they, a businessman in Da Nang, I was having breakfast, and, I expressed an interest to various people, hey, give me a tour of, the repressions of, imperialist collaborators. That's my interest. So this guy told me, he was like, yeah, like 1975, Vietnamese liberation forces come down. A comrade of mine, my super liberal organization, Carolyn, she was a Trotskyist, Socialist Workers' Party. She said, yeah, the Vietnamese Communist Party, very Stalinist, most Stalinist at the time in the whole world. Well, she was like, so very, it was brutal. Let's just put it that way. It was brutal. It probably more brutal than, I don't know, probably Russia, like Belarus, that kind of brutal, or Ukraine, maybe, back in the day, or even now. But so this businessman tells me, he's like, the collaborators in 75, they got put in front of a pit, and the government the whatever Soviet Vietnamese forces just bulldozed them alive into pits. So, yeah, that was the level of violence and brutality and death. But these were people who were basically fingering the best of Vietnam. You go up outside of Hanoi, and they have a memorial on the wall of the Queen of Vietnam, from 2,000 years ago, temple grounds. All of the heroes of the struggle, and one of them, she was brutally tortured after, I think she helped to execute like some puppet, and they sentenced her to 20 years in prison. She's like, "Fuck you! Your shitty little regime isn't going to last 5 years," and she was right. But they brutally tortured her. So those kind of people who work with people who are brutally torturing and occupying Vietnam, yeah, they got basically shot. And in Hue, I believe the numbers were something like 8,000 or 6,000 shot to start during Tet '68, and then all the way into September, I think they ended up shooting something like 15,000. And my impression is, this is off of Wikipedia, and I talked to like the son of an ARVN collaborator who gave me a tour, and some others a tour, and he was like, yeah, they were the Vietnamese liberation communists, whatever, Stalinist devils were very brutal and violent, according to him, but yeah, their primary objective was, if you're a collaborator with imperialists, we're killing you. And his father was put in a gulag only for 6 months. So he got off pretty lightly, actually. And the son lives in, Hue area, gives tours. So go figure. And what else? Yeah, had Tet New Year's dinner with Grandpa, my friend. And Grandpa fought the French and the Americans. He was in the National Liberation Army, and they told me, Grandpa said, or through grandson the interpreter, like a round went past his head and almost took his head off, but he survived the war. And then I was in Hanoi, and I had impromptu dinner with another comrade, Grandpa. He was like, gay, married, old guy. He was a teenager during the struggle, and he was in the NLA, and we hung out. He showed me his paintings, like I think through whatever it was, his phone, and, shared dinner with him, and, a very nice time, very nice guy. The veterans of the NLA, very cool, laid back, relaxed people. They went through the struggle, and the younger generation, they tend to be more capitalist and uptight. But they're generally, I guess, more or less nice. New Orleans or Vietnam is like Louisiana. It's got its issues. The Big Easy. North is more hardcore, like Belarus, and the South, I guess, is more kind of merchant, like Ukraine. And there's corruption issues there, but the party, I guess, had to keep an iron fist on top of things to keep things from spinning out of control. And generally, I guess the society is doing pretty well, for the region. And I've got a buddy, he's a ranger. Pension, disability pension. A couple of his buddies were blown up by friendly fire. He was a paratrooper ranger, whatever. And he enjoys going his moped all around Vietnam, central Vietnam. Eats a lot of dog, leaves the village before they lynch him. But really likes Vietnam. So more than Thailand. Thailand's kind of very degenerate shit show. But the Vietnamese, they're like Chinese, Southeast Asian, putatively Marxist. Got their shit together. Southern Vietnam in Chinese characters means south of the border, crossing the border south. So they're the Mexicans. They're Chinese Mexicans. I kid the Vietnamese, when I'm there. But I'm a northern sort of guy. But I'd go to Vietnam again, I guess, on vacation. Hue is nice. Hanoi, definitely. Really like Hanoi. What else? Dalat was okay. Nha Trang. Yeah, there's a couple of my buddies' kids there, cute kids, working the restaurants. And yeah, a lot of Agent Orange used around that area. I was reading, terrible. But socialized medicine there. I was chatting with one girl in a coffee shop. Mother was sick, but socialized medicine. They own their own places, so socialism of a sort. The revolution, yeah, it's definitely less shitty. And what else? They have a system of neighborhood watch there. So if you're a criminal or degenerate, they're going to kick your ass out or throw it in prison. So yeah, Vietnam, it's for what it is, the Louisiana of Southeast Asia. It's got its shit together, and tragedy about Agent Orange. You can go to the war museums there. Hilarious! You'd love this. So I go up. I guess it was Saigon or Hanoi. I can't remember. It must have been Saigon, I think. American Embassy, yeah, is there, right? Saigon. Excuse me. And so I walk around, and I walk to the front of the embassy, and it's a bunker. Like, the whole embassy is underground, and there's like serious gates, around the whole compound, because it got overrun during Ted, the year I was born. And what happened? So there's a guard there. He's got an underfolder Kalashnikov, must have been. And but there's a big ass poster, some liberal, multicultural, 27 gender poster. We feel your pain, people of Vietnam. We're for multicultural understanding, et cetera, et cetera. And I was just dying, reading that. And the guard was laughing too. And I was like, "Hey, can I take a photo?" And he's like, "Nah, sorry, can't let you do that. It is hilarious, but no photos allowed around the embassy as per orders, I guess, of the U.S. government." They had the comrades had a nice monument to the Tet Offensive on the side, and I did a video. But then the guard came and said, "Hey, that's prohibited." And I was like, "Really?" Because I was just come from living in the former Soviet Union, and there's these sorts of monuments all over the place, and everyone's like, "Cool, yeah, you want to commemorate our struggle, great." But the Americans are touchy, I guess. They're in a bunker. So, and then I went down the street. I actually messaged John Farnham. I was like, "Hey, John, I just had a coconut. I had my Cold Steel XL Voyageur, part of the family's Kunas from Quebec. I had to get the Voyageur. So I opened it up. I'm sitting next to the embassy on a stool with the coconut, and I'm trying to bang open the coconut, and Grandma comes by with her machete and helps me out and just splits the coconut, I think it was. Somehow I had to drink the coconut juice first, of course. They give you a straw, and then you open up the coconut and you eat the coconut. So that was the thing. But you can do it with a cold steel folder. It's heavy enough and the lock is strong enough. But really, the Vietnamese peasants got it going on with their machetes. Just one whack and the coconut opens. So I'm sitting there, with my little what do they call it, sling bag with the big cold steel folder in it. The Vietnamese polka banas, yuppies are like, "Whoa, that's a little much extra." But Grandma with the machete's like, "Oh, okay, let me show you a real tool, son." Anyway, good times, pretty much. So, glad you didn't get blown up in Vietnam. Yeah, that was fucked up, but. Anyway, thank God the imperialists got kicked out of there, and thank God imperialism is going down the toilet. And hopefully Vietnam, develops more and more and more, and those poor people, finally get some historical justice in terms of the last 100 years. So, take care.